So in this video we're going to be talking about forms of expression that are characteristic of archaic Greece, in particular lyric poetry. One of the things that's really striking about archaic Greece and classical Greece, which is a sort of stepping up of archaic Greece, is the emphasis that's placed on expression, on the awareness of the importance of expression for the development, for progress, for the achievement of movement toward the ideal society, the ideal individual. There are a number of ways in which this is demonstrated. One of the most colorful is the Symposion. The Symposion is a gathering of individuals, normally of the leisured class, normally amongst the wealthy, who are patrons of cultural expression. The Symposion is a gathering to experience, poetry, music, entertainment, other kinds of performances, accompanied by the partaking of alcoholic beverages, by the partaking of wine, in a shared environment, of loosening and relaxation. And of course, this is the immediate benefit of this is entertainment and pleasure, and there's often a carnal element to the proceedings, depending on who is hosting and what kinds of performances are involved and so forth. But the effect of this, the effect of the prevalence of the Symposion is to encourage performance, to encourage the development of poetry, song, dance, and other forms of expression that are absolutely vital, absolutely crucial to the emergence of new ideas. And alcohol is a key part of this for the participants as well as for the performers. And there's a very strong sense of participation, even though the members of the Symposion are gathered in a seated position that is reminiscent of the ways in which meals are taken and so forth. This is an active engagement with performance, and is designed to be of some kind of potency. By the way, this is a good place to mention the way in which men are depicted increasingly in artistic representations, especially depictions on the sides of vases like this. We shouldn't necessarily assume that men are always naked or half naked in depictions of men on vases and friezes and mosaics and so forth. We have we see in other imagery of hoplite warriors being depicted as entirely naked except for their shield and spear. This, of course, is extremely impractical, sometimes with a cuirass, and so they're only naked from the waist down. Likewise, we shouldn't necessarily assume that men are always the men are always ripped and buff in the way that they're presented in images like this. The point is that the artist here in depicting this Symposion is engaged in the depiction of the ideal male form as part of the encouragement of expression, as part of the purpose of art being to push things, to flesh things out. No pun intended. And so, this is a caveat that, in indications, in situations like this where you see, naked muscular men, this is not necessarily what the scene actually looks like. This is an artistic representation that is infused with the Greek obsession with the ideal. And there are a number of kinds of images associated with the Symposion, including the after effects. The individual on the left here is obviously the worse for wear and has to be helped in preparing to go home after a Symposion. One of the things that emerges as a part of this movement in artistic expression is lyric poetry. What the Greeks are familiar with in the Dark Age is epic poetry. Epic poetry, the chief examples of which are the Iliad and the Odyssey. Epic poetry is vast. It is, in a certain way, formal, and it is concerned with large themes and a large scale. And so, the Iliad and the Odyssey tell the story of vast events. Even the Odyssey, which is ostensibly about, one man's journey, Odysseus, is framing that journey as a part of, larger questions, as a part of the nature of human activity, of dealing with one's kinsmen, one's fellow citizens, with strangers, with the gods, and so forth and so on. It is concerned with very large questions. Epic poetry tends to be from the top down. It takes a larger picture, and it looks at individuals like Achilles and Odysseus and Agamemnon, not for questions of their character or dramatization of their behavior and their reactions to situations, but to represent key issues and problems for humanity. It tends to see the struggles involved as symbolic, and to deal with the primary questions of responsibilities that people have to society and the problems that result when you violate those responsibilities through arrogance, pride, hubris, dilettantes and rashness, and so forth and so on. So epic poetry, very large, deals with large questions, is very macro in its approach. Lyric poetry is a huge counterpart to this. Lyric poetry deals with the personal, deals with the intimate. It deals with the emotional responses that people have. It can be irrational. It can be even questioning of needs and responsibilities of others. It is an expression of the individual, and represents that same kind of shifting away from the top of society and toward the importance of the individual to pushing society forward. The kinds of ideas that are expressed in lyric poetry, most especially by the works of Sappho, today regarded as possibly the most important of the lyric poets of the Archaic period. The works of Sappho represent powerful emotional responses, personal, intimate, subjective, in contrast to the grand and the public and the objective of epic poetry. And in this sense, both are needed, because each is a side of how human beings come to terms with their relationship to the world around them. The Greeks are vitally aware, are acutely aware of the necessity for both these kinds of expressions in order to address the fundamental questions of society, up to and including the questions of responsibility, of right and wrong, of truth, so it's unfortunate that the works of Sappho have come down to us only in pieces, but they are hugely influential in their time. They are representative of an even broader movement of influence in poetry. They are part of what is emulated by other societies that admire the Greeks in terms of their expression. One of the most potent ways in which we know about the effect of Sappho is the extent to which the works of Sappho were later copied by the Romans, particularly, especially by the Roman poet Catullus, who converted actual works of Sappho into works of Latin poetry for the edification of the Romans. And so the same kind of personal interest in understanding society that we see in lyric poetry versus epic poetry, that we see in the similar contrast between the top-down approach of Homer and the bottom-up approach of Hesiod. All of these are ways in which the Greeks are exploring knowledge. And it's in the Archaic period that we have the emergence of one of the earliest of the famous Greek philosophers, Pythagoras. What's most striking about Pythagoras deals with mathematics and physics, as we would say now, but and so, we still talk about the Pythagorean theorem and this kind of thing. What Pythagoras does is he develops powerful theories about the natural world. In particular, what's most striking, what's most indicative of what I'm trying to talk about is the theories that he has about music and harmony. What Pythagoras has to say about music and harmony is essentially to say this is something that is beautiful, this is something that is aesthetically pleasing, this is something that is part of what is the glory of the natural world around us, part of what is the human mind responds to emotionally, and yet it is not arbitrary. The harmony and the beauty of music can be understood through mathematical equations. It can be understood. It can be taken ownership of. It means that beauty is not arbitrary. Beauty is not in the possession of the gods or in the possession of the chaos of nature. Beauty is something to which the door to which humans can unlock and open. The empowerment of humans has reached a new stage. Not just the ordering of nature that comes from the naming and organization of the divine world and religion. With philosophy, humans can surpass even the will of the gods and take possession not just of things that are obviously rational or obviously belonging to humans, like law, but to take something that is elemental to the world around us, beauty and song, and understand it and describe it. And in this way, the Greeks are on the road to setting humanity at a much higher place than any ancient people had ever dreamed of. One of the other things that's representative of expression during the Archaic period is the Kouros. The Kouros is still only understood to a limited extent. In other words, we have these examples of the Kouros, and there are certain things that we can say about them. They are large statues of young men. And they are representative of the beauty and youth of young men, and we can also say that there is a significant Eastern influence in the early development of the Kouros, so that we know that the Greeks from the late Dark Age onward are trading with the East. Maybe to a certain extent directly with Egypt, but certainly with the people within the Egyptian sphere of influence in Canaan and so forth, and so there is an incursion of Eastern influence in some forms of art, this form of representation in particular, but the Greek Kouros very quickly departs from the Egyptian model not merely in form, but also in the fact that an increasing fluidity, an increasing naturalness, an increasing use of the Kouros to express not just a cut and dried, a stamped form of the human male, but to express vibrancy. And this is something that we'll see even more of when we talk about art during the classical period. There's also a female form called the Kore, which, like the male form, this is the Kouros and the Kore are associated with funerary dedications and so forth, especially early on. But what's most striking of all about them is that they seem to be increasingly designed to represent the potential in strength and beauty of that is most potently demonstrated by youth. That the power of a young man or a young woman and what they're capable of, the extent to which they can move a society toward the ideal. This representation of the ideal for a purpose is part of the archaic push for new forms of expression, new forms of the creation of new knowledge and new ideas, and that's that.